My grandson's paper airplane revealed my daughter-in-law's secret that got me banned from seeing him. For 6 long months, I wasn't allowed to see my grandson. Not once. Not even a quick visit, a phone call, or a simple message. It had been the hardest time of my life. Then one day, on Timmy's birthday, I found myself standing outside his house. My heart was heavy, and my breath shaky as I gazed at the window of the second floor, wishing, hoping, to see him again. I stood there, my eyes fixed on that window, heartbroken, waiting. Then something fluttered down from the sky, a small paper airplane. I picked it up, my hands trembling. The paper was crumpled and worn, and I knew this had to be from Timmy. I'd spent 6 months in silence, trying to respect my son John and his wife Olivia's wishes. But that day, I couldn't stay away any longer. I stood there, frozen in place, staring at the paper airplane in my hand. It had been 6 months since I'd last heard Timmy's voice, 6 months since I'd last seen his smiling face, 6 months of pain and confusion. My son had stopped answering my calls, and Olivia had made it clear I was no longer welcome in their lives. There was no explanation, no reason. They had just cut me off. I took a deep breath and stepped out of my car. My legs were unsteady, but I walked toward the house. The second floor window was slightly open, and that's when I saw him, Timmy, his little face pressed against the glass, his tiny fingers leaving smudges as he waved to me. "Grandma," he mouthed, his voice muffled by the glass. My heart leaped in my chest, and I waved back, barely able to move. Just as quickly as the moment came, the front door creaked open, and there she was, Olivia, my daughter-in-law. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her tone cold and firm. "I just wanted to drop by. I brought Timmy a toy," I said, holding up the small gift. Olivia barely glanced at it. "We've discussed this before, Mrs. Roberts. Timmy doesn't need unnecessary excitement. I'm his grandmother," I said softly, my voice breaking. "A toy from me isn't going to hurt him. This is John's decision," she said, her words like a weapon. We agreed that some distance would be best, and just like that, the door slammed shut, leaving me standing there, speechless and hurt. Slowly, I bent down and placed the gift on the doorstep, a final attempt to show I cared. Then, as I stood up, something brushed against my shoulder. A soft, white flicker tumbled through the air and landed near my feet. I bent down to catch it before it hit the ground. It was a paper airplane, crumpled and worn, just like the one I had found earlier. My heart raced as I carefully unfolded the paper. Inside, I found a message written in uneven handwriting. I read it once, twice, then again. A chill ran down my spine. The words were clear, though the handwriting was messy and young. "Grandma, I want to see you. Mom says you're bad, but I don't believe her. I know her secret. I'll hide it in the dinosaur book. Love, Timmy." I sat in my kitchen later, staring at that note in shock. My fingers traced the edges of the paper as I tried to make sense of what Timmy had said. What secret could he possibly know? And if Olivia really had a secret, how dangerous would it be for me to get involved? My mind kept racing. I sat across from Mary, my oldest friend, stirring her peppermint tea. She was watching me closely, her eyes thoughtful. Finally, she spoke, her voice quiet but steady. "This could be a setup," she said, tapping her spoon lightly against the cup. "Olivia threw you out, and now suddenly, Timmy wants to reveal some big secret? Seems a little too convenient." I shook my head, my grip tightening on the note. "Timmy doesn't lie. He's telling the truth. I know he is." Mary set her cup down with a soft clink and frowned at me. "You really don't know why your son cut you off, do you?" I blinked, feeling a lump form in my throat. "He said he was disappointed in me," I admitted quietly. "But I don't know why." Mary leaned forward, her voice gentle. "Why, Joan? Why did he say he was disappointed?" I sighed, the weight of the past 6 months crashing down on me. "He claims the money I used to buy my house was meant for Timmy's education, but we never talked about it. I don't understand. I thought I was doing something good. I thought I was helping." Mary sat back in her chair, looking at me with a mixture of concern and sympathy. "Maybe there's more to this than you know. You need to find out what Olivia is hiding, but be careful. Sometimes the things we don't know can hurt us the most." I nodded slowly, my mind still spinning. The note in my hand seemed to grow heavier with each passing minute. What was Olivia hiding? And how much danger was I in if I tried to find out? It was my money, my savings, money I had worked hard for over the years. And suddenly, John told me I had betrayed him. The words stung, but they didn't make sense. I had always tried to do the right thing, always tried to be there for my family. But that day, everything changed. Mary leaned forward, resting her elbows on the kitchen table, her face thoughtful as she watched me. The smell of peppermint tea hung in the air between us, but I hardly noticed it. My mind was too busy trying to make sense of it all, of what had happened and why things had turned out this way. "So let's go over this again," Mary said, her voice steady. "Everything was fine until you bought the house?" "Yes," I replied, my voice soft but heavy with the weight of the truth. "Before that, we weren't exactly close, but things were fine. At least, I thought they were." "And then?" Mary prompted, urging me to continue. "Then everything changed," I said, feeling the bitterness rise in my throat. "At first, they just kept making excuses. Timmy has school, they'd say. John's swamped with work. And Olivia, well, she always had a prior engagement, whatever that meant." I shook my head, remembering the frustration that built up inside me. "And they never gave you a real reason?" Mary asked, her voice gentle but probing. "No," I replied, "but I didn't push. I figured they needed time to settle into the new place, so I started going to them instead, trying to make the effort." Mary nodded, her finger tapping against the table, her mind clearly piecing together the story. "Right, and at first, they didn't stop you?" "Not at first," I said, "but after a while, it felt like they didn't want me there either. Whenever I'd visit, Olivia would keep glancing at the clock, like she was counting down the minutes until I left. John was polite, but distant. It was like I was intruding in my own son's home, a guest in a place I should have felt welcome. And then the last time you went," Mary's voice softened, knowing the pain the memory caused. I swallowed hard, the lump in my throat growing as the memory flooded back. "It was Timmy's birthday," I said, my voice breaking. "I showed up with a cake and gifts like I always did. I wanted to make it special for him. But when John opened the door, he just looked at me, like I was someone he barely recognized. And then he said," my throat tightened again as I tried to finish the sentence, "Mom, you are acting strangely. I don't know what's going on with you, but I think it's best if Timmy keeps some distance for now." The words echoed in my mind, as clear as if it had just happened. Mary sat quietly, her gaze never leaving me. "Did you ask him what he meant?" she asked softly. "I tried," I said, shaking my head slowly. "I told him I didn't understand, that I hadn't done anything wrong. I just wanted to be there for Timmy, but he kept repeating that it wasn't a good time and that I should respect their space." I paused, the ache in my chest growing. That was the last time I saw Timmy. After that, they shut me out completely. "And now Timmy's sending you notes about a secret?" Mary said, her voice full of realization. "Whatever it is, he knows something. You can't ignore that." I looked down at the small paper airplane in my hands, the note Timmy had sent, the words he had written, so simple yet so powerful, tugged at my heart. "Then I need to find out what," I said quietly, my voice filled with determination. "But there's a missing piece here," Mary added. "This isn't just about the house." She was right. I could feel it, deep in my gut. Something didn't add up. The house wasn't the issue. It was just the turning point. There was more to this, something I hadn't seen, something I hadn't understood. And whatever it was, it had cost me my family. The library had always been Timmy's favorite place. It had been our little ritual, just the two of us, spending hours in the children's section, reading about his beloved dinosaurs. His tiny fingers would trace the T-Rex on the cover, and I would smile as he tried to sound out the names of the creatures. Those were the moments I cherished most. The following week, I made a decision. I started going to the library every afternoon, hoping, praying that somehow I would find what I was looking for. My fingers skimmed along the bookshelves, lingering on the very same dinosaur book Timmy loved. I checked it again and again, day after day, searching for any clue that would help me understand what was going on. Then, after days of patient searching, I finally found it. The book was still there, exactly where Timmy and I had left it. But this time, something was different. It wasn't the same as before. As I flipped through the pages, I found a folded piece of paper tucked inside the book, hidden carefully between the pages. My heart skipped a beat as I opened it, wondering what it meant and whether it would finally reveal the truth about the secret Timmy had mentioned. There, in Timmy's uneven handwriting, was another note. This one was brief, but it sent a chill down my spine. "Grandma, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get you in trouble, but Mom says I can't tell you. Please don't be mad." The note was simple, yet the weight of it felt unbearable. What had I gotten myself into? What had Timmy uncovered? And more importantly, what was Olivia hiding? Tucked between the pages of the book, I found a note. The simple words sent a shockwave through my body, as if the ground beneath me had just shifted. Timmy had written, "I heard Mom talking about the money you borrowed from Dad. Maybe if you give it back, we can see each other again. Grandma, I know you're good. I miss you, Timmy." My heart sank as I read the words again. The world around me seemed to tilt, the room spinning as the reality of what Timmy had said hit me. My hands trembled, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. Borrowed money? I had never borrowed money from John. What was this about? Why would Olivia tell Timmy such a thing? I felt a mixture of confusion, hurt, and a deep, unsettling fear that something had gone terribly wrong. I quickly gathered my thoughts, shaking off the numbness that threatened to take over. I knew I needed to respond, to let Timmy know that I was still here for him, that I still loved him. I grabbed a piece of paper and wrote my response, trying to keep my handwriting steady, though my fingers felt as if they might betray me at any moment. When I finished, I folded the paper carefully, tucking it into the same book where I had found Timmy's note. My heart beat faster as I left the library, feeling as though the weight of everything was finally beginning to unravel. I had made a mistake by staying silent for so long, by not standing up for myself. But now I was ready to face the truth, ready to fight for my grandson. I just hoped Timmy would find my note and follow the instructions. The mall was bustling with life when I arrived. The air was filled with the sounds of children laughing and squealing with delight as they darted between towering dinosaur figures. In the center of the mall, parents trailed behind, balancing oversized shopping bags and half-eaten snacks. It was a typical Saturday afternoon, chaotic but lively. I scanned the crowd, my eyes darting between the faces, hoping to catch a glimpse of Timmy. Please let him find the note, I thought to myself. Please let him know what to do. Then I saw them. John was walking beside Timmy, his tall frame cutting through the crowd. My heart skipped a beat as I saw Timmy's face light up when he spotted me. His small figure hesitated for a moment, his eyes flicking up to his father, seeking some kind of approval. I held my breath, praying that John would let him come to me. And then, without warning, Timmy broke free, running toward me with all the joy and innocence of a child who knew nothing of the complications surrounding him. "Granny!" Timmy cried, his voice bright and full of excitement. "I did everything. You asked me in the secret note." John's gaze followed his son, and the moment his eyes locked onto me, his expression darkened. His body stiffened, and he came to a slow stop, his jaw tightening. "Mom," his voice was cold, almost flat. "What are you doing here? What note are you both talking about?" I stepped forward, my pulse racing, my heart pounding in my chest. This was it, the moment I had been waiting for, the moment I had dreaded. "I know about the money," I said, my voice steady despite the fear swirling inside me. John's body went rigid. He didn't say anything at first, but I could see the muscles in his face tighten. Then he spoke, his voice full of accusation. "So, you're finally admitting it?" His words were sharp, like a knife cutting through the tension between us. Before I could respond, a familiar voice cut through the air, sharp and biting. "Oh, and you're here too." It was Olivia. She appeared from the side, walking toward us with that same polished, almost unnerving smile on her face. She was holding a pink cloud of cotton candy, the sugary treat looking almost out of place with the coldness in her eyes. "I had a feeling Timmy wasn't telling the full story when he begged his dad to come alone," Olivia said lightly, her words casual, though the tight grip she had on the candy stick was a clear sign that she wasn't as calm as she was pretending to be. I ignored her, my eyes fixed on my son. This was between us. "John, did you ever check where that money actually went?" I asked, my voice sharp but calm. John hesitated. His eyes darkened, and for a moment, I thought he might say something. But instead, he just shook his head slightly. "You said you needed it for treatment," he said slowly, his voice low. "I wouldn't have asked for it back if that was true, but Dr. Collins has never treated you for anything serious." His voice grew colder. "I trusted you. And then you bought a house." My breath hitched. My mind spun as I tried to process his words. "What?" "John, I never took your money," I said, my voice rising with the shock and confusion I felt. "And I never had any health problems. You know that." John's expression hardened as he stepped closer to me, his jaw clenched. "But the voicemail, it was your voice, Mom. You left me a message." A cold wave washed over me as the pieces began to fall into place. The voicemail? What was he talking about? I had never asked John for any money, and I certainly never needed any treatment. But if John had a voicemail, a message that sounded like me, what had Olivia done? I looked at John, my heart aching, not just from the pain of what was happening, but from the realization that the truth was slipping away from me. Whatever game Olivia was playing, I was caught in the middle of it now, and I had no idea how to escape. This wasn't just about money. It never had been, and I was starting to realize just how much I had yet to understand. "You said you were struggling," I continued, my voice wavering with a mix of hurt and confusion. "You told me you didn't want to worry me, but that you needed help." I looked directly at John, hoping that somehow this would make him see that I had never asked for any money, that something had gone horribly wrong somewhere. John's eyes widened with disbelief as I spoke. His expression faltered, and I could see the wheels turning in his head, trying to make sense of what I was saying. But before he could speak, I added, "John, I never asked you for money, and I certainly never left a message like that. I don't know where that voicemail came from, but it wasn't from me." John's gaze suddenly snapped to Olivia, and I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. There was something in the way he looked at her, something that hadn't been there before. His tone was sharp, demanding, as he asked, "Did you give Mom the money?" That day I was swamped with work, so I gave you the cash to pass to her. For the first time since this whole mess began, Olivia faltered. Her eyes shifted, her lips pressing into a thin line as she stammered. Well, yes, she said, but there was no conviction in her voice. I handled it, like you asked." The words hung in the air, and I could feel my heart race as I pieced everything together. I'd known something wasn't right, but now I was starting to see the cracks. Timmy, who had been standing quietly by my side, suddenly stepped forward, his small hands fumbling with the zipper of his backpack. "Mom, maybe she changed the money for these papers and then forgot," he said, his little voice breaking the tension. In the air, his hands were trembling slightly as he pulled out a thick stack of receipts and crumpled checks, struggling to hold them all at once. I gasped as I saw the papers. They were crumpled and disorganized, but there was no mistaking what they were. Receipts from stores, checks that had been written out, and totals that made my stomach turn. "Timmy," John said sharply, his voice suddenly filled with panic. He reached for the papers in Timmy's hands, his movements fast and purposeful. "Give me those." Olivia made a sudden move to stop him, but John's hand darted out, and with a sharp flick of his wrist, he pushed her back. His voice was low, but I could feel the anger boiling under the surface. "Not now, Olivia," he said, his tone dangerous and commanding. The room seemed to grow colder as John began to look through the papers. He glanced down at the receipts one by one, his expression hardening with every new one he uncovered. His breathing grew heavier and his face flushed with frustration. Finally, he exploded. "What the hell is this?" His voice rose full of raw fury. "Jewelry stores? High-end boutiques? Vintage collectors' shops?" He held up a receipt for a jewelry store and then another for a designer handbag store. His fingers shook as he flipped through them, his anger building with each new purchase. "These aren't small purchases, Olivia. These are thousands of dollars." I could feel the tension in the air, like a live wire that might snap at any moment. Olivia inhaled sharply, her eyes wide with panic. She opened her mouth to say something, but her words came out in a shaky, defensive tone. I just bought a few things," she muttered, her voice trembling. "A few things?" John's voice was low, but there was no mistaking the fury in it now. "You spent our son's education fund on what? Handbags? Diamond earrings?" His face was red, his fists clenched at his sides. "You spent all that money on this?" Olivia looked taken aback, her composure slipping for the first time. She opened her mouth to defend herself, but the words didn't come out the way she wanted. "I didn't mean for it to happen like this," she cried, her voice almost breaking. But even in her panic, there was still an edge of defensiveness, like she was trying to protect herself rather than admit to what she'd done. John didn't even look at her anymore. He was too focused on the receipts, too consumed by the realization that everything he thought he knew about his family was a lie. He was shaking with rage, and I could see the years of trust between them crumbling before my eyes. I stood there, frozen in place, trying to make sense of it all. The money, the lies, the voicemail, all of it. And now, I was starting to understand what had happened. Olivia had been hiding something, and she had used Timmy, our precious boy, as a pawn in her game. As John continued to go through the papers, his anger growing with every new receipt, Olivia stepped back, her eyes darting around the mall, clearly panicking. But it was too late. The truth was out now. There was no turning back. I looked down at Timmy, whose small hand was still clutching my own. His innocent eyes were filled with confusion, as if he didn't fully understand what was going on, but I knew he had just uncovered something he shouldn't have. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. This was just the beginning. There was more to uncover, more lies to unravel. But for now, the truth had finally come to light, and everything was about to change. "I thought I could replace the money before you noticed." Olivia's voice trembled with panic, and for the first time I could see the cracks in her carefully constructed facade. She was unraveling, and it was all happening in front of me. "But then I found out your mother wasn't sick, and I panicked!" She was rushing through her words now, trying to justify what she'd done, but the truth was clear. It didn't matter how fast she spoke. The damage had already been done. I stepped forward, my feet firm on the ground, and my voice as hard as steel. "I've never been so sick as to borrow such money. So you faked a voicemail? You actually recorded my voice and made it sound like I was asking for help?" My words echoed in the open space, heavy with the weight of the betrayal. Olivia's eyes darted between John and me, her lips parting as if she were about to deny everything. But then she paused, and slowly she shut her mouth. The truth was too big to deny now. She had nothing left to say. John exhaled sharply, his body slumping as though the very weight of the situation was crushing him. His fingers ran through his hair in frustration, and I could see the exhaustion in his eyes. He looked utterly drained, defeated. "You lied to me," he said, his voice low and shaking. "You made me believe my mother used me. You kept Timmy from her, from his grandmother, just to cover your own tracks." Olivia swallowed hard, and I could see the tears welling up in her eyes, but she didn't speak right away. She just stood there, as if she were trying to figure out how to explain herself, how to make any of this make sense. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I have a problem, I know," she confessed, her gaze dropping to the ground. When I buy things, I feel better. It's like, I need it, and I was scared you'd find out and hate me." John shook his head slowly, disbelief written across his face. His eyes were filled with sadness, but there was no anger in them, just a deep, painful disappointment. "I don't hate you, Olivia," he said softly, his voice steady despite the hurt, "but you need help." It was quiet for a moment, and I watched the scene unfold before me, feeling helpless yet understanding at the same time. I had never imagined it would come to this. Olivia's secret, her compulsive need to buy things to feel better, had torn apart not just our family but also her own. I could see now that she wasn't the villain I had thought her to be. She was struggling, just like the rest of us. Timmy, who had been standing quietly beside me, finally shifted closer. His small hand, which had been gripping mine for comfort, gave me an even firmer squeeze. He looked up at John, his eyes wide with uncertainty, then spoke hesitantly, his voice small but full of hope. "Dad," he said, his words careful as if he wasn't sure how they would be received. "Can I stay with Grandma for a little while?" John turned to look at him, his face softening for a moment. He exhaled a long breath, as if the tension in his chest was slowly easing. "Yeah, buddy," he said, a small, tired smile forming on his lips. "I think that's a great idea." John then turned to me, his face still full of exhaustion, but there was a gentleness in his eyes. "I'll bring his things later, Mom," he said, his voice steady. "We'll have dinner together." I nodded, a warmth spreading through me at the thought of having Timmy all to myself, even if just for a little while. "I'd love that," I replied, my voice thick with emotion. With that, John reached for Olivia's arm. She didn't fight him as he gently guided her away. Her face was pale, her expression unreadable, as though she were too numb to feel anything. They disappeared into the crowd, leaving Timmy and me standing there, the weight of everything that had just happened hanging between us. As they walked away, Timmy tugged gently at my sleeve, pulling me from my thoughts. I looked down at him, and he looked up at me with a shy smile, his little face brightening. "Grandma," he said, his voice full of excitement, "can we get ice cream now?" I couldn't help but smile, my heart swelling with love for this sweet boy who had been through so much already. "Of course, sweetheart," I replied, my voice soft and full of affection. "Anything you want." And just like that, we were free. Free from the tension, the lies, and the secrets that had weighed so heavily on our family for so long. Finally, we had all the time in the world to spend together. No more interruptions, no more barriers, just Timmy and me, making memories, one small moment at a time. As we walked hand in hand toward the ice cream shop, I realized that no matter what had happened in the past, no matter the mistakes and the hurt, we had each other now, and that was enough.